And I know you said you overturned your own sentence, which is amazing in itself. But you did something I read and I said, what? You got a veteran police officer to confess?
Yes.
How? What did you do?
Well, you know, this was now 7.5 years later. And one of the things that was happening with me, this was a divine journey. I mean, I cannot lose this truth. I was on a divine journey. And one of the things that was happening to me in prison is that I was representing other prisoners in prison in a court line system. So in prison is like being on the street in the sense that they have courts inside the prison for people who do wrong in the prison. They'll get an infraction, they'll get charged, just like you get charged in the street. They'll go to the hole, just like you get sent to jail on the street. And then they'll have a court set up where they'll try you for the infraction that you did. Now, lawyers don't get involved in that. So who gets involved? It's other inmates who have been trained to deal with that situation. And so what was happening with me, I wasn't just teaching myself the law and fighting my cases and that was on the street and fighting other people's cases that was on the street, but I was also representing these infractions, these in-prison infractions. And this was 7.5 years. So by the time 7.5 years came along, I was 1,000 times better than I was when I got that life sentence, losing that trial. And when they looked at me, they didn't see it until it was too late. So at this time, when this hearing, and what's important about that hearing is that before that hearing took place, on the day that the hearings began to start, the prosecutor offered me a deal to allow me to be home in 2 years. He said, you know, my kingpin conviction, which my life sentence was vacated because I got that vacated 3 years earlier when I made new law in another prisoner's case and turned around and used that to reverse my own kingpin conviction. So when I went back, I didn't have the life sentence. I had 70 years that they affirmed on all the other charges. So they saw what I was doing, they cut me off at the knees, and they said, okay, I saw what you did over here. We'll throw that life sentence out, but we're gonna let you remain with the 7 years. So now, 7.5 years later, I'm at this hearing. The prosecutor says, listen, this has been going on for 7.5 years. We've been in and out of court every other month for 7 years. I think it's time for this to end. Mr. Wright is still facing retrial on the kingpin. We can give him life again. What we're going to do right now is we're going to offer Mr. Wright a deal that will allow him to go home in 2 years. He just has to withdraw this motion, have no hearings. He'll be home in 2 years. He won't have to worry about anything anymore, and we won't pursue sending him to prison back for life again. And the judge, you know, he was elated. He turned around and, you know, he saw that I had an opportunity to be home in 2 years, and he asked me, he says, you know, the prosecutor is offering an olive branch. What do you want to do? And I basically said that they took away from me. They took from me 7.5 years of my life. They took it. And I was not about to give them a single second of my life. I'd rather spend the rest of my life in prison trying to get out, even though I could be home in 2 years, than to give them another second of my life. And so I rolled the dice. I knew that the only way that I was going to get out was to have a police confess. And I rolled the dice.
I don't want to play Monopoly with you. You won't quit.